Houston started mixing up shots of heroin. And I didn't hesitate. I said, yeah, I'll have one of those. So I spent my very first show as a real pro muso in front of 10,000 people vomiting behind an Ampeg, pedaling A's, getting through the gig, and voila, welcome to rock and roll and welcome to heroin.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Hi everybody, Ron here from The Truth About Addiction. Welcome to another episode. Today we've got a special guest, Steve Balbi. Steve is, some of you will know his face, some of you will know his voice, some of you will know who Steve is. I know who he is because I used to follow a band that he used to be in a long time ago, and that was one of my favourite Aussie bands. And look, I'm going to let Steve tell his story, and let's sit back and listen to one man's story of how he overcome his adversities. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Hey, Ron, how are you, mate? Yeah, Steve Balbi here, and very grateful recovering addict. I've been clean now for, it's a bit 25 years. Sitting in, I'm still in holiday mode. Sitting in my studio, where I've been fortunate enough to, continue my dream and utilize my potential. I was born with a gift, like we're all born with gifts, and I can't believe that I'm now 60 years old and still have my full potential intact. I wake up and I am living my dream still. It got pretty scary for a while there, and I thought everything was over. But over the last 25 years, I've been able to build an amazing life, be the best dad I can possibly be, and I'm still working on being a decent partner, but I'm getting there. My wife hasn't left me, so look, it's a funny thing, addiction, isn't it, Ron? I mean, I'm not exactly sure why I have this disease. I don't know if I was born with it. I don't know if I acquired it. I don't know if it was part of, my situation. But, my basic story was I was born into Newtown, immigrant family from Malta. We lived in a semi with my grandparents and my auntie and uncle, two uncles, my mum and myself, and another auntie. So there's a lot of us in the house. As far as I can recall, it was a really loving house. The Maltese sort of way is very family orientated, very loving, maybe a little protective, but so I don't have a horror, childhood to talk of. But I do remember I think my first interaction, I remember running around the tables concoction of everybody's leftover drinks, and I remember drinking it, sculling it, in fact. And I remember a lot of attention. In fact, I remember being on the ground and having people looking at me. And once again, I don't think that was necessarily, receiving that attention on that particular night was a thing that I sought. I do believe it's just sort of, just part of my DNA. As I said, I'm really not sure why I've got it, but I realized down the line how I could stop from using. And but anyway, going on, I remember being at school, and I remember feeling like I was in a silent film. It was like people would be talking to me and I would be thinking about what I was going to say. I was always very sort of terrified. I wasn't very learned at school. I wasn't very academic. I didn't feel like I had any answers to any of the questions that were being asked. But I had a way of kind of getting by through sort of this verve of character. and being a little bit wild and being a little bit out of the box and kind of making people laugh, or I had a way of just scooting out of the actual situation, you know. I started smoking pot very early, I guess when I was about 14. After the first attempt of smoking a bong, blowing through the bong as opposed to inhaling, I kind of really enjoyed that feeling. I remember I was rocking on a cane chair, listening to David Bowie, Hunky Dory, Life on Mars. And it's just like this whole universe opened up to me, you know. I liked it. I really liked that feeling. And it very quickly became a once a week thing, probably to a few times a week. And then very, very rapidly to sort of every day. And then I started drinking as well. I remember the first time I had a drink as a teenager was I went to a formal. I bought a bottle of Brandivino, and I didn't have it sculled the bottle. I mean, I was the only one that sculled the bottle of Brandivino, you know. Why did I do that? I don't know. I didn't get into the dance. I passed out on the front lawn, and my parents had to come pick me up, you know. It's just sort of appeared. I think I was just scared. I think I was just scared of what was out there. And anything that could take me away from that, I wanted. I learned how to drink a little bit better than that, but I was playing in pubs. I'm a musician, and I was playing in pubs, you know, before I was 16. And so I was drinking a lot, and I guess I was partying a lot, and it was pretty amazing to be like the center of attention, and, you know, and have people sort of admire you, you know. It's a really weird thing, but I got off on that, and there seemed to be a license to be able to drink and do my job at the same time. So it was it's a weird kind of profession to be in that case, in that sense, you know. I remember being 16 years old, and my mum received a phone call. Anyone sort of around in my era would probably remember the name, but it was a guy called Kevin Borich on the phone, and he asked my mum if I could go on the road with his band. I was only 16 and a half. I had to learn all this material. I'd never been on an aeroplane. My first show was a 10,000-seater in New Zealand. I remember, it's a long story, so I won't go into all of that, but I had this cassette I had to learn. Somehow the cassette got switched, and I had ended up learning a whole set of this other blues band called 𝐑𝐨𝐤𝐤. They were pretty good, but I found myself at 16 years old on an aeroplane. I took headphones to Kevin. I said, "What's going on with this part of the song?" And he put the headphones on and went, "Who is it?" I shat myself. So I'd realised then I'd learned all the wrong material, and I was about 12 hours out from playing this show. So we land in New Zealand, and instead of going to find guitars and rehearsing, we've landed at this. We went to this guy's house called Paul Hewson. He was the main songwriter for Dragon, and Kevin and myself and the rest of the band sat around this table, and Paul Hewson started mixing up shots of heroin, and I didn't hesitate. I said, "Yeah, I'll have one of those." And I spent my very first show as a real pro muso in front of 10,000 people, vomiting behind an Ampeg, pedaling A's, getting through the gig, and voila! Welcome to rock and roll, and welcome to heroin, and you know, I used for the next 4 years just smoking it then, and I thought I was okay, but I got a new band together, and I ended up making a decision to stop using heroin, and I found myself before this show curled up in the band room. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know I was addicted. I didn't know I was in withdrawals. I was in tears. I was a mess, and I ended up drinking myself into alcohol poisoning and had to have my stomach pumped after that night. And I still didn't realize what was happening to me. I had no idea. And I thought addiction was I didn't realize it existed. Once again, I think the underlying thing was just fear. I'd never really practiced my instruments. I was always I just kind of did it because I loved it. And I felt like a bit of a fake, you know, and I had fear around everything I did. And I think drugs and alcohol kind of gave me an identity, you know, the wild out of it guy that sort of did this stuff, you know. And I went on and I used from when I woke up to when I went to sleep. If I managed to sort of wean myself off heroin through, whether it be using coke or speed, or I ended up on a stable diet of pot and alcohol for a decade there, because I was in a band that had a record deal and I just couldn't get away with it. It wasn't an actual decision to get off heroin. It was just I could get people off my back and just drink and smoke, because rock and roll dudes are allowed to do that, right? And I pretty much traveled the world drinking and scoring wherever I was. And nothing really happened until I had my drugs. I put so much at risk. Anyway, it's sort of, a decade passed and I ended up leaving that band. I started working with Major, and we always used to say, oh, one day we'll have a little tickle, a blue moon. We'll have a blue moon. And I remember my wife being away, and just so happened tonight was the night we were going to have a little tickle. And I had a shot, and by the time my wife got back from the UK, it was a period of about 4 or 5 weeks. I was using every day. And when she did get back, there was a lot going on within our relationship, but I looked for any excuse to leave, and I did that. Now bear in mind, I'd built up a real life. I had an apartment in Potts Point. I had the dream job. I had the dream wife, but I used heroin, and that was my first love. And I left, and I decided to leave everything for that. There was also more to that. There was that insecurity thing, and that thing of feeling like, at the time, my brother was working for the council digging roads, and I'm sitting in a friggin' hot spa with a joint and a shot of heroin, driving some sort of sports car, feeling incredibly guilty that I'd been given all this stuff and I didn't even fucking try. It just sort of happened. And I'm wise enough now to know that I was given a gift. We're all born with gifts, and that gift, I couldn't help having it. It was given to me to use and to give to others. And for my years of playing music and using this gift, I did it to be loved. And that was incorrect. I eventually found out when I got clean that the gift I had was to be given, not for others, to others, not to be loved, but to give the gift. So I've really come to terms with that. And I understand that now when people say, that was amazing, I go, thank you, because I just have a gift that I've given to you. I don't really have much to do with it, Yeah. So I came to terms with that. But a lot of my, my leaving that very comfortable situation was to destroy myself and feel like I felt like I had to lose myself to find myself, and I didn't want to feel like I guess I felt like an imposter. I had all this stuff, and all I did was play music, and that seemed a bit easy. I did a really good job at losing myself, because I left that apartment that night. When my wife got back, we had a discussion. I left the apartment. I had money in the bank. I made a verbal agreement that you can keep the apartment, bad business. You can keep the apartment and I'll take the cash. And I went to live at a friend's squat in Forbes Street in King's Cross. I had a guitar and I took a painting and my bank account. And I never returned. From there, I spent the next decade using every day $50 at a time. I remember after a couple of years, after my first sort of rehab stint, and my accountant looked at my bank statements and there were like $4, $5, $50 withdrawals a day for a big chunk of time. He's going, what is that about? First people I started robbing was my parents, because by then I was 36 years old. I didn't have a house. All my gear was, or what gear I had left was in the hock shop. Had a stinky pair of flared corduroys, and that was about it. And one CD at a time, my CD collection went, and then your CD collection went, and all the ets started happening, and it was very rapid. It was very rapid, and I guess heroin did me a favor in the sense that there was no mistake that my life was unmanageable, and I tried to give up for that whole decade. After my last shot, I'd always say, okay, bang, okay, now I'm going to stop tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. I'd have that little dance, and then until the next shot. And eventually, I don't know what happened, but there was one house that I could stay in, and I still had a band. I was still playing music, but there was this dear fellow who's passed away now, but he had a house in King's Cross, and he was a very benevolent man. And the bass player in my band, a girl called Kathy Green, she used to be in a band called X. She lived at this house, and they would let me stay there from time to time. And I stayed there one night, and Kathy woke up and he said, let's go for a coffee. And I thought, yeah, okay, let's go for coffee. But I'll meet you there. You go and I'll meet you there. So she left. I grabbed her bass. I went and hocked it, scored my drugs, met her at the coffee shop, said, just a sec, went into the bathroom, had my shot, came out, looked at her and started crying. I couldn't stop crying. I bawled, which seemed for hours. I went back to this house, and the guy that lived there, Greg, he was in recovery. And I don't think this was planned, but I was sitting at his table in tears, absolutely just broken. And his old phone directory, an analog one he used to write in, was open. And in big black letters, was open on the page of P. In big black letters was the name of a rehab called Phoenix. I'm sure it wasn't. It just happened. And I remember through the tears thinking, I'll call it up. And I made the call, and they said I had to call next week. I did that. I went back to my parents' place, and the other little miracle that happened that week was I could never stay off drugs after the third day. 2 days I'd manage. soon as I could walk again, I would be running up to the shop, so I remember lying there, and I always used to try to give up around this time of year because the test match cricket was on, and I'm a big cricket head, so at least I could roll around, do the washing machine on the couch and watch Warnie and all the guys, playing cricket and kill a bit of time in my head, and I used to use, in those teenage years, with a friend of mine that lived around the corner, and I hadn't seen him for a decade. In fact, the last time I saw him, he was OD'd with a needle in his arm in my lounge room with his 4-year-old kid running around. I got back from a gig, and I hadn't seen him since then. Wouldn't you friggin' know it? I'm there on my third morning, and then this guy turns up at I opened the door, and he said, "Wow, you look like shit." Now remember, I hadn't seen this guy in 10 years. He said, "You look like absolute shit." I said, "Yeah. Have you got any drugs?" He said, "No, man, I'm a year clean." He said, "I'm your sponsor." He said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, supposed to go to rehab in 3-4 days' time." And he said, "Have you been using?" I said, not heroin, but I've been taking pills and smoking pot and drinking." And he said, "Okay, well, if it's the last rort you do, we're going to get you into this rehab." And so he pretty much nursed me as my sponsor. And I went to Phoenix. I got in there, did the urine test, thinking, I'm out. Results came back. No one mentioned anything. I'm fucking sitting there kind of whistling, And for some reason, I didn't get kicked out. Pete didn't have anything to do with that, but I just don't know why. But something happened. The pain got me to NA, and NA got me to some kind of higher power, and a lot of cliches that kept me clean. I found out that I was an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. That was such a friggin' relief. I couldn't work out how I could exist like this, and I wasn't the only one. There was thousands of us. I remember, halfway through the rehab, being with my counsellor, and this really lovely lady. She was so gentle and soft, and I didn't even think she ever swore, but she said, "It's a real shame." She said, "I really like you, but I know that you're going to be one of these people that leaves this place wishing they had done more." She said, "And pull your fucking finger out. Start cleaning up your mess." And it's these little things I really think that, well, once I'd accepted that I was an addict and my life was unmanageable, I didn't know what the whole God thing was. I was very confused about that. But a few things happened that I think that were really key for me. I started cleaning up my coffee cups after myself. I started making my bed, brushing my teeth, and having a shower first thing in the morning. And I got down on my knees. I'm not a religious person, but I got down on my knees and I prayed this because I was told to. My prayer was full of swear words. It was like, if you're really fucking there, well, show me, because I'm fucking over this, you fucker. I don't want to use anymore. Lift this compulsion and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not making it up, but my compulsion was lifted, and I'd accepted deeply that I was an addict and I couldn't use drugs at all. And I didn't know if I could do that, but I was in a place, a fellowship that held my hand and my heart, and a day at a time helped me to not pick up. And honestly, I did my step work and I did service.
Yeah.
I did all the suggested things, in fact. Probably not 100%, but I did my step work, and they were one-liners. I'm not a novelist, so I wrote really short answers to questions that I was asked. I did that. I like systems, and I did that after I was 6 months clean. I got a service position on the phone line, and I would do my phone line position from 6 in the morning till 12 or whatever it was. I can't remember the actual time. Light a candle, make a coffee, have a cigarette, and I'd do my step work. When the phone rang, I did that. And I did that for, I don't know, a year or so, and I'd finished my step work. And I went to a meeting every day for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
And I called my sponsor. And I'm 25 years clean now. And I built a foundation for me to live a life on. And I got my kids swimming out in the pool there. I got a beautiful studio here. And I live in it. But the great thing is that the greatest gift of all is that I have my potential. Because with that, anything is possible. And I owe it to the fellowship. I don't know if this podcast is, I know we don't advertise NA and that whole thing, but you know, I think this is a place where it's probably safe for me to say that I could not get clean without the love and the fellowship of the people in NA, and I'm so grateful, and I still try to be sponsor and help people if I can, getting to keep it by giving it away. So I know it's probably a bit of a scattered share because there's so many places I could travel to, but I tried to keep it sort of, you know, I hope that was okay.
It's beautiful, mate. I love it. And you know what the thing I love about it too is because I'm an ex-heroin addict. These days we're not talking about heroin, we're talking about buprenorphine, talking about ice, we're talking about GH, and you know, I never even knew what these drugs were. You know, like I never even took any of these drugs. You know, and but I know that the degradation, the dereliction, the fear, the fucking self-hate. The thing I hate about this disease is it steals us of our potential. And what you said, you know, the last 25 years you've been able to live your potential. I'm probably, you know, one of the most controversial figures in the 12-step programs. I'm still clean. Testimony to the 12 steps. People say to me, there's other ways. Yeah, there is, but not for me. Yeah. I have other things. I've been to India. I went to Jerusalem. I've done the whole search the world for the spiritual gurus, you know, and I walked the path of Christ. And, you know, I've done everything. You know, I was a criminal. I had a lot of money. You know, I traveled the world and searched. And I laughed my head off because everything I was looking for me was inside of me. All I had to do is work the 12 steps thoroughly, consistently, honestly, openly, respectfully.
Mm. And to the best of your ability.
The best of my ability, Steve. And, you know, mate, go and check out a podcast I've done with a lady called, I think it's Dr. Higgins. She talks, she's a GP in America, really beautiful woman. She was a doctor, and she was writing scripts, you know, in the city. She's living in the big city. She's writing scripts, and she'd ring up Pfizer and say, this person's pain still not better. Let's say double his dose.
Yeah, double his dose.
Yeah, double the dose. There's a true story. This is why it would be good for you to listen to it. Then she rang up about psych meds. They said double his dose. She said, fuck this, I'm sick of being a drug dealer. Her husband was an alcoholic. She'd met this alcoholic husband while she's a doctor. So she moves to the bush, the country, as we call it in America. She'd moved out to the country. And she started to ring up the pharmaceuticals, it was double the dose. And she realised, she said, I'm a fucking drug dealer for the pharmaceutical companies. So she broke away and she went into DNA. And she believes she's found the DNA now for addiction. It's not going to matter. but it's nice to know that they've found something.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When you said that, mate, it was like, yeah, fucking oath. There is a DNA. There is actually, she's found some chromosome that is in addiction. And it's worth listening to. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
Check it out for you, mate.
You would have wondered that at times, it's like,
why?
You can understand that someone that's been, had a terrible childhood and blah, 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 wanting to escape, but I could never work out how I didn't have that, yet I still found myself like every other person in a rehab.
Dr. 𝐁𝐚𝐿 talks about the trauma. I think that's a really broad brush.
Yeah.
I love him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's an incredibly intelligent man, and I love listening to him and that. But I think it's too broad of a brush. We all have trauma. I don't believe anybody hasn't got trauma. And the next thing too,
yeah, true, absolutely.
I got a message from an old mate of yours last night. A guy called Charlie.
Yeah.
He's a Maltese guy called Charlie. He said he worked with you many years ago after he came out of rehab.
You serious?
Yeah. I'm his sponsor. He was in rehab with me 42 years ago. He's a muso now.
Far out.
He's a lovely guy. He's a Maltese. I call him 𝐁𝐚𝐿.
Yeah, 𝐁𝐚𝐿.
𝐁𝐚𝐿. He's my 𝐁𝐚𝐿, But because I was talking to him, I said, I'm going to see. He goes, I worked with Steve years ago, He was a builder, so I don't know where he's worked together, but anyway, he told me to send you his love, mate. He's 20 years clean as well now. He went back out for 20. He went back out for 20 years after getting clean in 81. And he's back now for 20 years. It's so wonderful. We're having a little bit of trouble with the internet now. I think it's a bloody big city you live in. Every million.
Frozen.
Yeah, millions of people are on the internet every second over at your place. But look, mate, I really appreciate you coming on, Steve. It's been wonderful. Mate, if this recording didn't turn out perfect, mate, we'll do another one. Really enjoyed you coming on to The Truth About Addiction, mate. I love your story.
Hey, Ron, thanks, man. It's so good to see your face again, mate. And I'm glad to know that you're still clean.
Yeah, mate, yeah.
If you and I can stay clean, anybody can stay clean.
Exactly, mate. And what I'm starting to do a lot of, mate, I'm going to start doing lives. So if you've got some spare time, we'll just jump on lives and talk and try to invite other people into the conversation.
Yeah, stay in touch, man.
100%, brother. Thank you very much, Stevie. Be safe.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.